Hey, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the Rosary, something that I've had a hard time getting into, but it's really helped me. One of the things that I found during this whole journey that I've been on is that I have a hard time sticking with one thing, and my mind will go into thoughts of, well, this isn't really working right now, so let's try something different, and I'll end up starting all over again with something else. Before this, I was going back and forth between two Episcopalian churches, not really able to make up my mind which one I really wanted to do or commit to. And, the same thing with like diet and exercise plans. I've been going back and forth, and I'm frustrated with this one, so let's try this one, and they're usually not the same, so you end up having to make all these changes and basically starting all over again at zero. And also, your body's trying to get used to one thing and then you jump to something else. So anyway, this happened to me last week. I was really having a lot of doubts about the journey, especially because I know that I have to go through the annulment process for some previous marriages before I can take the Eucharist. And that's kind of a hard thing to come to terms with, especially when I know I can go right down the road to an Episcopalian church and take the Eucharist whenever I want to. So, you know, there's all kinds of things that go along with that. Like, yes, I could go to the Episcopalian church and take Eucharist whenever I want to, but do I really believe a lot of the things that the Episcopalian church teaches? Or do I, how is that a compromise? What am I losing when I do that? And I think one of the things that I am losing is like that structure, and that saying, okay, in order to be really right and to really to be right with the Lord, and to truly come back to him, you have to kind of examine these things that have been in your past and what has led you on this journey. And that kind of helps you figure out what you need to do to change moving forward. So that's kind of been how I've viewed this annulment process. But it is very mentally challenging. And it is, especially, there's a lot that's involved in the annulment process. And at some point, I might talk about that. Um, but, it was enough for me that last week I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if this is going to work. I might end up not taking the Eucharist until my previous husband dies. And, God forbid that happen anytime soon. So, just really those mental messages were really, I was having a hard time with. But the Rosary. So, you know, I had really gotten to the point where I had kind of talked myself into going back to the Episcopalian church. And I was like, I know I don't want to do that. I know there's things that Episcopalians believe that I don't necessarily believe anymore, simply because I have built a pretty good foundation in the Catholic Church so far. I haven't been there that long, so I can't say it's all that great, and it's still growing every single day, the foundation. But so far, I really love Catholic teaching. So I got the Rosary out and I started praying it, and it has really helped my mindset. It's helped me stay on track, and just having that connection to Mary and to Jesus through the Rosary has really helped my mindset, and it's starting to become a habit that I do every day, praying the Rosary. So yeah, just whenever you're having a hard time mentally, You've got the devil whispering these things to you in your ear, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds like an easier way to go. Another thing that's helped me is there's a book by Eugene Peterson called The Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And it's a book that I've kind of been working through. But even the messages in the book, I don't think have helped me as much as just that phrase, long obedience in the same direction. So, that phrase itself, being obedient to the way that God wants you to go, and sticking with that, having that perseverance to stick with that even when it gets hard. And that has been, just the thought of that, and what that phrase actually means has been super helpful to me. So when I start having those doubts and having those messages in my head, I've really kind of stopped and been able to stop and say, is this really, a long obedience in the same direction? Are you being true to that? Are you being true to what God is asking you to do? So the Rosary is helping with that. Stopping and asking myself, what does God require you to do for this to be a long obedience in the same direction to God? So those are just some things that I kind of wanted to touch base on today and kind of get off my chest. I have some other things that I'm ready to talk about, but I haven't quite gotten myself together to be able to do that yet. So hopefully I'll have some more stuff coming up soon. But thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.